Hello and welcome to day 10. It is hard to believe that there's only 2 weeks left of our Advent tea year. And I'm both, I think, relieved and a little bummed. Now, I did think to myself, how could I keep the fun going a little bit? And one of my plans is to move to a weekly tea review starting in January. So I will be doing one approximately 20 to 30 minute video, so along these lengths here, but I'll only be doing that once a week, maybe twice a week depending on how much tea I have to get through. I actually have this really great set of loose leaf tea from Singapore, and it's been hanging around waiting for me to review it, so I will be starting off my new year with doing those teas. So definitely, if you're watching one of these for the first time, consider watching the other ones, maybe subscribe so that you can be part of the next phase of my tea review stuff. I do anticipate that as long as I have an advent calendar of tea, I will do the daily updates, even though it's occasionally a delay. I had a couple of workout things today, and then I got home and wasn't really feeling super great, so I'm waiting to edit this and get it all compiled for the 11th. So if you're watching this, it's going to at least be December 11th, if not later, depending on how far behind you are. Anyway, let's get to the tea now that we've got everything going there. So here's our little box for today. Little ornament, kind of almost looks like a red spade that you would get on a deck of cards, but spades are of course black. I know that. I just said it looks like a spade. All right. Today we have organic Silk Dragon Jasmine. So angling in like that. All right. So today's tea has 2 out of 3 pips for caffeine, so there's real tea in here. And the recommended steeping time is 85 degrees Celsius for 2 to 3 minutes. And the primary ingredients, we have organic Chinese green tea from the Jiangxi and Fujian provinces, scented with jasmine flowers. So hey, thankfully the tea today is not going to kill me. And again, if this is your first video that you happen to see of mine, welcome. Sometimes tea ingredients, if not prepared correctly and if not controlled in the right amounts, those ingredients can actually kill you or lead to serious food poisoning kinds of effects, along the same lines as just regular poison. So definitely go back through and check out those videos. Those are always a hoot. But I am not allergic to green tea or jasmine or anything like that, and nothing that I found in my reading suggested that these are going to be toxic ingredients. So let's go ahead and get to the smell. I mean, it's like many other jasmine teas that are out there. You're going to smell a lot of that floral nature to that jasmine, and then you're going to get that kind of grassiness of the green tea itself. And when I pop this over to the other camera here, you're going to see that there is no variety here. This is all green tea. That's it. Just green tea. There's no real particulates of jasmine flowers, though there definitely could be. I'm not saying that there for sure aren't, and I will explain why that is a little bit later on. But I suspect this is all just green tea. Straight up. And as with some of my more finer grained loose leaves that I've had in my sample calendar here, I actually have quite a bit of tea in this canister. So I'm going to actually get to have this one again, maybe share it with my spouse. We'll see. He's not the biggest fan of green tea, and I know a lot of people aren't, in part because green tea can often taste pretty grassy, or if it is scented with a flower or a fruit, it can be a little overpowering with that particular floral kind of quality. All right, so today with the 2 ingredients, I'm taking a slightly different approach about them. What I want to talk about is actually a little bit about where the tea is coming from. So again, the green tea comes from those two different Chinese provinces, Jiangxi and Fujian, and I am trying very hard to pronounce those correctly. I at least pronounced them well enough that when I was explaining where my tea came from, when I was on a walk with my husband, he was able to go, oh, those provinces are in the southeast of Asia of China, and he starting to give me a far too in-depth exploration of the history of these provinces and certain people that are known for coming from those provinces. And it was more information than I really wanted, so I tuned out. Anyway, the Jiangxi province, the first of the provinces listed there, is, like I mentioned, it's along the southeast of China. It's actually still landlocked, and so it is surrounded by the Hunan province, the Hubei province, the Anhui province, the Zhejiang province, the Fujian province, and the Guangdong province. Guangdong is where you're going to find Hong Kong, and in the northeast of Jiangxi, which I don't remember which province it is because I totally spaced writing which one it is, but that's where Shanghai is. So Jiangxi is to the southwest of Shanghai. The Fujian province, if you were kind of keeping track of what I was describing geographically there, is going to be more southeast than Jiangxi, and it is actually coastal. Now, the Jiangxi province is centered on the Gan River Valley, and it has played a role throughout history in the north-south trade routes. Even though it was not directly on the Silk Road, the tea that is produced in the Jiangxi and then the Fujian province as well would have made its way up into Shanghai, and then from Shanghai would have made onto the historic Silk Road and then across the rest of Asia and into Europe, and thus eventually reaching England. And England then became a major consumer of tea, and the rest is pretty much history there. Now, in the northwest of the Jiangxi province is the city of Jingdezhen, and it has been making porcelain for over 1,000 years. And the city, if you ever end up out there, is home to the remains of a Ming-era imperial kiln. And one of the reasons I mention that is because that's really what the Jiangxi province ended up being known for, more so than tea. The Fujian province is way more known for tea, whereas Jiangxi is known for the porcelain because of the Ming era. Now, Ming, actually, whenever it gets brought up, just always makes me think of the scene from the musical Cats, where the two cats, Rumpelteazer and Mungo Jerry, are talking about their exploits in their very well-to-do home that they live in. And there's that loud ping from a vase, which was commonly said to be Ming. So they destroy a Ming vase. And then the other thing that Ming always makes me think of is the scene in The Last Crusade. So Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You have Sean Connery's character, Dr. Henry Jones Sr. He's been kidnapped by the Nazis, and Indiana, played by Harrison Ford, comes heroically to save his father. And in the dark, he's not paying attention. And in the dark, his father can't tell who he is and smashes him over the head with this heavy-looking vase. And then immediately he's super sorry and apologetic, and it's because he recognizes in the light, oh, this patterning here, this is a 14th century Ming vase, and then he is, thinking about this vase on his own, and Indiana ends up saying, I'm fine, I'm not hurt, kind of thing, and in response, Sean Connery appears to initially say, oh, thank God, and it's like this weird, rare, touching moment there between them, except then Sean Connery's character goes, it's a forgery, and he points out the details of the crosshair section that it's, a fake vase, so it ends up being that this archaeologist is way more concerned about the piece of history than about his own son, and that's pretty much all you need to know about that relationship between those two characters because it features the rest of the film. Regardless, the Ming Dynasty, also called the Great Ming, ruled from 1368 to 1644 after the collapse of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. It was also the last imperial dynasty ruled by the Han Chinese. The Han Chinese are an East Asian ethnic group and nation, and they are historically native to the Yellow River Basin. They are actually the world's largest ethnic group at 18% of the global population. And that particular group of individuals are pretty linguistically diverse within the Chinese language even. There are multiple subgroups and dialects of that Chinese language that span that entire group. So just like we have different accents and subdialects of English and every other language does as well, same is going to be true for Chinese. Notably about the Ming Dynasty, porcelain is a major influence. It's a major factor. It's something that truly we remember the Ming Dynasty for. And it's largely due to the economic success of the 15th century and thus a surge in demand for handcrafted goods of quality. And in particular, with the Ming Dynasty porcelain, the cobalt blue and white patterning on it of the city Jingzhiden gained great popularity all over the world. That was what people were really wanting. Now, of course, you do have some of the forging going on, or the low quality porcelain that gets really left outside the country, or sent outside the country rather, because if you're making something that's really high quality, you probably want to keep it in the family. So you've got that being a factor for sure there. But the Ming era porcelain actually influenced ceramics of other countries. So you can see the influences of the Ming porcelain from ceramics that are produced in Japan all the way to those that are produced in Britain. It had a far-reaching impact, in part because during the Ming Dynasty, the porcelain production process was really actually fine-tuned and kept making that perfect standard more and more perfect. It just kept improving upon itself, and so you kept getting higher quality ceramics out of it, and it just really continued to drive the market for that high quality good. Otherwise, other than the porcelain, Jiangxi is known predominantly for the fact that it has rice paddies pretty much everywhere, and it's got rivers and mountains, so it's this really beautiful green, lush, fertile area, and you're going to see those nice tiered rice paddies, and that's going to also be common in the Fujian province. It also has mountains. If they border each other, we can kind of guess where the mountains probably are. And with Fujian's coastal cities, they also have the city of Quanzhou, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I have heard that you pronounce Q's with that ch sound instead, so it is spelled Quanzhou, so that's why I'm pronouncing it Quanzhou or Quanzhou. That city actually was once visited by Marco Polo. That province, the Fujian province, actually also at one point hosted 4 distinct Neolithic cultures, so really ancient people, and they can trace at least 4 of those distinct people groups to the Fujian province. So I thought that was kind of cool. However, it wasn't until the establishment of the Ming Dynasty that Fujian even became a province of the rest of China. I do know that Chinese history has a little bit of the, hey, look, it's a single country with multiple provinces. Oh, wait, it broke kind of trend over and over and over again. Again, my husband watches a lot of history-oriented YouTube videos, so I've heard a couple of these things before. But pretty much throughout all of that, up until the Ming Dynasty, the Fujian province, and especially the city of Quanzhou, remained sort of a de facto kingdom. It just hung around, it got some benefits, and largely was left to itself. And then the Ming Dynasty came in and made the Fujian province part of the rest of China. And they moved the capital to Fuzhou, and then Quanzhou became the staging area and supply depot for sea trade and naval expeditions. And again, when I was happily sharing what I had learned, my husband chimes in and goes, "Ah, yes, Zhang He." And I went, "I hate you." He knows way too much about way too many things, and it makes it sometimes really hard to share something that I learned because he already knew it. But that is also true of that city. That is who else Xuanzhou is famous for having seen come through. Now today, the Fujian province is one of the more affluent provinces in China, and they have many different industries ranging from tea production to clothing and sports manufacturing, and it is actually also home to some operations from some of those big tech giants like Boeing, Dell, GE, Kodak, Nokia, Siemens, and Panasonic. There are, of course, others, but those are some of the big names that people in the United States would likely recognize. So it's got a lot of that going on. And yeah, that's what I had on that. As far as talking about green tea itself, green tea did actually originate in China. You've probably heard the legend that basically someone was drinking some hot water and a leaf fell into his tea, and then he created this whole new beverage. And I have obviously only heard it loosely because I can't even remember who it was that is rumored to have actually discovered tea. Now, green tea does actually come from the same plant that we get all other teas from. So we get our white tea, and we get our oolong tea, and we get our black tea, all from the exact same plant, because that is actually the tea plant. When it comes to black and oolong tea, we actually then oxidize the tea and treat it a little bit differently, so that way it creates that blacker color. And one of the reasons why that happened is actually because green tea was so popular that it was really easy to fake. And so people would go just basically out to a park and collect leaves and grasses and basically just cut them up really fine and then let them dry out. And then they'd try and sell this as green tea. And, or they might cut it with actual green tea. So you'd have, mostly green tea or partially green tea, and then you'd have not at all green tea, and then of course you'd have actual green tea. And one of the big problems with that, of course, is that when you don't drink something that has been properly prepared, you can actually suffer health effects, as I've been saying for a few videos now. So you could end up with drinking something that's either just really gross or actually potentially seriously dangerous. Interestingly, actually, fake green tea remains a concern today, and so you always want to make sure that you are going through a trusted, vetted tea merchant, such as David's Tea for this one. Again, not a sponsored video, but that is the tea I'm drinking, so worth reminding you, I'm drinking David's Tea. So you definitely want to make sure that you're always vetting where you're getting your tea from, so that way you're not inadvertently poisoning yourself. So because of that, black tea, especially in England, became very popular because it was a much easier way of making sure that the tea was authentic. It's a lot harder to fake what black tea looks like than it is with green tea. So there's a major reason for why black tea became so popular, and it's because green tea itself was popular. So, tea drinkers everywhere really have no reason to dislike one or the other. They are the same plant, and yes, they have different flavor profiles, and I know that's why some people dislike it, but you can't have one without the other, really. Although you could have green tea without black tea. Let's be honest on that. Anyway, the other reason why black tea became popular is, remember I talked about the Silk Road. The Silk Road, going from Shanghai has to make it a huge amount of distance to be able to even get close to England. And green tea loses its flavor in its pure form after about a year. So if it takes super long to get from Shanghai, where they're really getting fresh, current, like the best of the best green tea, it's gonna take a while, and it's not gonna be nearly as tasty and as good by the time it gets to England. So oxidizing the tea and processing it into black tea actually retains the tea's flavor. Additionally, then you can pack black tea down into these huge tea bricks that you can't otherwise do really well with green tea, and so then you can actually have tea as its own form of currency, which is kind of cool through all of that. Now, if you are drinking a blend of green tea or green tea that has been mixed with something or flavored with something or scented with something, it will retain its flavor a little bit longer. So that's probably one reason why you often end up with green teas scented with jasmine or with jasmine or other things like that. It's because it helps retain that flavor. Now, that brings me to the note about scenting with jasmine. And I'm going to, at this point, go ahead and actually measure my water this time. Who had that for their prediction today? My guess is no one, because I almost didn't do it. I may have let it cool just a little long, but it should be okay. All right, so today's tea is scented with jasmine flowers. And that is actually the primary way that we experience jasmine tea, in part because jasmine flowers are pretty pricey, apparently. I did not know that. I thought of it as being fairly common, but actually getting the flowers for tea in the volume that you need for jasmine tea can be really expensive. And so you end up scenting your tea with jasmine flowers in order to help reduce some of that cost. And there are apparently 2 ways to do it, at least according to thespruceeats.com. Number 1, place fresh jasmine flowers on a tray underneath a woven tray where you actually have your tea leaves. These are going to be fresh cut tea leaves. They're not dried yet. So you're going to have your tea leaves in a nice woven tray, and then underneath that, you're going to have your tray of jasmine flowers, fresh jasmine flowers. And you're going to leave those together in a warm room for a really long time. And you're going to constantly replace and refresh those jasmine flowers, which can actually be very expensive from what I was reading on that. And what the Spruce Eats describes that as is that you end up imparting the tea with an ethereal light aroma and flavor. So we're looking for something that's going to seem otherworldly from our tea here, apparently. When I smelled it, I don't know that I smelled, fairies or anything like that, but, you got a light floral scent. Now, I do not know which of the 2 methods that I will be talking about here David's tea uses. Could use either of them. So the second way is cheaper, and what you end up doing is you use the wilted leftover jasmine flowers from process number 1. So this is actually kind of cool. No waste on this one, but you use the leftover flowers there, and then you toss those in with, again, your fresh cut green tea that doesn't have any of the dried bits yet. It's just all fresh, ready to go. You toss that in, you kind of mix them all around, let the tea pick up a lot of that aroma and flavoring from those wilted jasmine flowers that, of course, have been warmed. So a lot of that has already been pulled forward. So it's going to be a little bit of a faster process. And then after they have been mixed together for a while, you go back through and get all the jasmine flowers out. Sometimes jasmine flowers obviously make their way through, which is why I'm not sure if I have jasmine flowers in this or not, because I don't know which method David's Tea uses. And if they use method 2, which is totally fine, then I don't know that I would know enough about whether or not I have a dried jasmine flower in here or not. Now, I do believe jasmine is actually a white flower, so I would expect that I'd be able to see that, but I'm not fully 100% sure on that. So it's possible there's actually jasmine flowers in here, but again, I don't know. Anyway, there is actually another way to get jasmine tea flavoring, and that's using jasmine essential oil or flavoring, or some sort of combo of jasmine oils, natural jasmine flavoring, artificial jasmine flavoring, anything like that. However, jasmine essential oil is one of the most expensive essential oils in the world, so unlikely to find a good quality tea that's at a cost you want to afford with the jasmine oil in it. And jasmine teas that are flavored using the flavorings and oils rather than the scenting process, either one, are actually considered inferior green teas. So if you really want authentic green tea that's going to taste good, be prepared in a nice traditional method, then you're going to want to look for something that's truly scented with that green tea. Probably my guess is that David's tea is for sure going to be one of those, authentic methods, because this tea is actual Chinese green tea and it is certified organic on this one. So I would absolutely imagine that they're going to be using one of those first two methods. So let's go ahead and check out my steep over here. So this is a very yellow colored green tea as I'm looking at it. And that is something that, is always a little interesting about green tea, is looking at that color. It's a nice greenish yellow though. It's very clear. I can see straight down to the bottom of that cup. It's a very light, pleasant looking color. It looks exactly like you would expect green tea to look. And I actually think that, unlike some of my other teas where I think the aroma is not nearly as powerful in the actual steep than it is in the dry form, I actually think that they're exactly the same. I'm still getting a really good scent of jasmine flower in here, followed by, that nice grassiness of the green tea. And I know that sounds a little weird. I keep saying, oh, it's so nice and grassy. I don't mind that flavor. I actually quite like green tea, so let's go ahead and give this a taste. I will agree actually with the spruce eats that regardless of what method that David's tea used here, I think I am getting a nice light aroma of the jasmine. It is a very light bodied tea. It's flavorful. The grassiness that I know is why some people don't like green tea does not really come through on this tea. This is actually a really pleasant drinking experience on this one. If you're a green tea fan, I really do recommend this one. This one's great. This one's probably going to be up there near the top of my favorite list. But again, I like green tea. A friend of mine and coworker actually suggested that I do a sort of leaderboard, and I think I'm going to try and put one together for either day 11 or day 12, depends on how complicated it ends up going. So I'm basically going to rank all the teas so that way you can see exactly where I'm putting them, and then I will, of course, at the very end show you what those final results are, and I'll make the file available somehow. I think I might be able to attach a file to the YouTube description. We'll see. But that way you can actually see exactly what my recommendations are. I will include the steeping directions on them. Now, of course, if you do buy the teas from David's Tea is going to tell you how to make the perfect cup of tea for that blend. But I'll include that kind of information so you have it as a reminder to yourself when you're shopping for your next cup of tea. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you for day 11 soon. Bye.